John chapter 6, verse 1. After this, Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee, or Tiberias. John chapter 6 is definitely the longest chapter in the book of John, and I believe it's the longest chapter not only in just the other four Gospels, but even the entirety of the New Testament. It's a very long chapter, but it's also a very robust chapter. It points us to lots and lots of things theologically. It's a turning point in Jesus' ministry. This is a point when you see large crowds at the beginning of the chapter, and by the end of the chapter you only see a very small handful of people who've been just whittled down to the remnant of the faithful, and Peter, representing them, says, where else are we going to go? You see a lot of connection to the Exodus and to Moses. John's point here is going to be, as we'll see in some of the verses later, that Jesus is the better Moses. He's the bread of life. We see a connection to that manna. We see, this major water crisis as Jesus is walking on the water, similar like the parting of the water. There's a lot of ties here that draw many connections back to Moses, and John does mention Moses quite a bit. This is a very, very robust chapter. Let's go to this very first verse. After this indicates that there's a passing of time. We don't know how much time exactly. These events we're going to see, we find out in verse 4 around the Passover. So we know that some time has passed, and now we're close to this Passover. Again, another tie back to the Exodus where the Passover was first started. And then we see that Jesus has now gone over to Galilee. So he's going to go there. He's going to see some events that are there. And then there's this parenthetical statement that says, or the Sea of Tiberias. That is because the Romans renamed the sea after an emperor, and John seems to be keeping some of the Gentiles in mind as he's writing this. This is a really robust chapter. It's hard to go through it verse by verse, but we will. But I want to encourage maybe you go through and read the whole chapter before we get started.